Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank ILO, particularly Roberto De Miglio and Anita Amorim for enabling me to participate here. My presentation is basically on the contribution of SSE on the localizing employment generation. One way of approaching development is to look at constraints and looking for solutions to overcome these constraints. And we're talking here of social solidarity economy. So the question is, how does SSE overcome this constraint? For example, there is inefficiency in microeconomy. So you have individual entrepreneurs and they lack scale of operations. So what does SSE do? What is the coping mechanism of SSE? There is resource pooling and collective action. Now, another development constraint is you either have abundant supply of labor or lack of human capital. And the coping mechanism of SSE on human capital is that it adopts a community approach. It's a local community approach to development. So it is inclusive because it mobilizes whatever human capital you have in the community. The third constraint is the lack of financial and insurance markets. In many rural areas, many far-flung areas, you have this constraint. So what does SSE do? It does not wait for the government. It creates solidarity finance and insurance systems. And the fourth constraint is poor public governance and corruption. What does SSE do? It provides democratic and ethical self-management as a countervailing culture. Now, of course, there are also corruption among SSE organizations, but there's one thing that's different between government and SSE. When there is corruption in SSE organizations, they die. The government does not die. So there is a natural selection process. Only the good ones survive in SSE. But governments, when they have bad governance, they continue to survive. This is different. And then the fifth constraint is underinvestment in human capital. You will note that SSE organizations, Cooperative, they prioritize education and healthcare. Finally, there is overexploitation of environmental capital in the mainstream economy. How does SSE cope with this? Well, they prioritize people's welfare and environmental conservation over profit. I think this was emphasized by the previous speakers. Now, let us look at what is social solidarity economy. I think it has been explained, but I'd like to emphasize here that the pivotal actor in SSE is the organization, the SSE organization or enterprise. And the economic activities are varied from primary production, processing, finance, and distribution, all the economic activities in an economic system. So how does SSE contribute to employment generation and inclusive growth? Now first, let me clarify that what we mean by employment creation or generation in SSE is actually equivalent to enterprise establishment or enterprise creation. You cannot create jobs in SSE unless you organize an enterprise. That's one thing. Now when you have enterprise creation and job creation, this is equivalent to wealth creation. So what are the means by which SSE contribute to employment? There's one model that we have seen in Asia. Here is a cooperative registered in the formal sector, dealing with the formal market, linking backward with informal groups. These are individual entrepreneurs producing products. The cooperative organizes them. They are not registered. They remain in the informal sector. But there's one thing, they are given the assent word because their workers' rights are protected. Most of these examples that I have cited here are adopting fair trade practices. Model 2, a primary cooperative is established and then it responds to the needs of its members. It organizes a marketing cooperative, organizes consumer cooperative, a cooperative bank, healthcare co-op, and cooperative school. It expands And while it expands in meeting the demands of its members, it creates jobs, it creates wealth. The third model is it organizes, this is an organization, organizes self-help groups. This is a project that I have done in Asian countries when I worked with FAO in Bangkok. And these self-help groups are informal groups. They have no access to resources, but there is a formal organization registered that tries to link them to markets. This is the third model. The fourth and last model is actually developing the whole supply chain of a particular commodity. So from primary production to processing, assembly, distribution, consumption, these are all undertaken by organized groups of ordinary people. So these are the four models that we have found in several countries of Asia. But I suspect that there are more models there. These are only found in our case studies that we have conducted for ILO. This is the cover page of that the publication. The link is also there. So now, the summary. Let me summarize the contribution of SSE in localizing employment. SSE organizations are a significant source of new employment. I have made the case for these four models of SSE. They are resilient. I think that's been pointed out a while ago. They have a longer term perspective and investment horizon. Why? Because they would like to invest in human capital rather than in finance capital. So it also outperforms non-worker owned enterprises in normal times. This has been emphasized by the previous speakers. Now it strengthens farmers' position in the value chain. In Asia, we are focusing on this approach. They need to strengthen the position of primary producers in the value chain. There's a positive correlation between employee ownership and labor productivity. When the members of a community own the enterprises, there's greater labor productivity. Income security, which is also an important aspect of decent work, and other contributions to livelihoods and equitable growth. So, I'd like to end with the note on South-South and Triangle cooperation, how we are going to propose this strengthening of SSE organizations in Asia for the ASEAN Economic Community. And there are 7 points there, but let me point out number 7, which is promoting the South-South and Triangle cooperation in ASEAN. And we are going to launch this somewhere in the first quarter of 2016, of course, with the collaboration of ILO. And the first to 6 activities are components of this South-South and Triangle cooperation. For example, we need to continue the conduct of case studies of SSE because there is no continuity of data on SSE. So you cannot find organized data on SSE in many countries of Asia. They don't know the term SSE, but they know cooperatives. Second, we have to engage the ASEAN policymakers in policy dialogue. This is quite important in order that they will be convinced to create a policy environment conducive for SSE. We need to train leaders and managers of SSE. And here we are collaborating with ILO SSE Academy. It is being planned. The next academy in 2016 is being planned, and hopefully in Asia. And hopefully this will bring a new revival and the enthusiasm for SSE in Asia. And we would like to establish a growth fund for SSE. And number 5, offer higher education. We would like to mobilize the universities to offer courses on SSE. It's one way of promoting this. And finally, our colleagues were saying, let us also do not forget the consumers. Without consumers, there is no economy. So we need to enlist consumers for SSE. And we were asking, what is the figure? We said, let's start with 1 million. So this is the program of SSTC in Asia. And I would like to now call your attention on this book, a compilation of SSE articles and reports from different parts of the world. This was launched in South ILO Academy in Africa, and today this is the first book that you have seen of this copy. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can get your copy of this book. Thank you very much.